Okay, welcome back to the Northeast Corner, episode 16. Shout out to Sean Saul for making that little intro that you've just witnessed there. Musicians Fae Moray Part 4. We have another musician, funnily enough, from Moray, Aidan Grant. I'm delighted to be joined by Aidan Grant today.
Hello.
How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm very good. How are you? Nice to be here.
Yeah, but we had this in the pipeline for quite a while, right? I messaged you a couple months ago.
Yes, yeah.
Primarily just because I like to have things set up in advance, and yeah, that's kind of the whole story behind that. But yeah, how's it been going? How's things?
Oh, things are going quite well at the moment. I've been quite busy with a bit of everything, really.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just finished my first year of uni doing chemical engineering, which is a bit different from my music, but it's nice to have a wee break from stuff, because I always thought that if, for me personally, because I do so much of music outside of uni, if I ended up studying it, I would just bore myself to death.
Yeah.
And could not. I'd lose my interest.
Is it like good to have that kind of versatility in your life?
I personally love it. I think it's great for me. It like keeps me focused on everything as well, because then if uni gets too stressful, I can come away and do my music. It's great.
Yeah, I suppose you like we've spoke about this a few times to a couple other musicians. You don't want to. A lot of people choose music to get away from. I don't want to say regular work because that sounds insulting, but to like get away from a job and that, because like they can't resist that urge to pursue what they actually love doing. Whereas if you overindulge in music, I suppose it can maybe manifest itself back into that kind of chore, if you will, and then you kind of lose why you're actually doing it to begin with. But let's get right into it after that little introduction. So I have a couple notes here. It's not really questions, it's more like outlines that we'll just kind of talk about in that. So how we start off every Musicians Fae Moray episode is just where you grew up and your early life.
Well, I actually grew up in Hopeman, so not very far from here at all. I've been there for about 17 years. I was born in Elgin. That's about as interesting as it gets. But living wise, it was quite nice growing up here actually. So I was obviously Hopeman Primary School, which I first took up my musical instrument, which was the violin, or the fiddle as it was, as I call it now, but it was the violin when it was first introduced to me. Yeah, and then carried that all the way through into like Lossy High, and I've just been here. I've finished a couple of years ago. I've done quite a few things. I've been doing taekwondo for years. That was kind of a massive part of my growing up in character as well. I started that when I was 4, following the footsteps of my dad. So it's been a huge part of growing up to be, well, who I am basically.
I think that adds like a lot of discipline and humility to you.
Yeah, a lot of discipline. That was one of like its main focus. It was good for me because it's like I need some sort of discipline to keep myself going. I need to give it to myself to keep myself focused on everything I need to do, because otherwise I'd just go insane. Yeah.
Does that benefit the music in any way? Not maybe obviously like what you learn in taekwondo, but the things that you take away from that kind of help you in your kind of musical journey in terms of like the discipline and the humility of I don't know, like approaching a song, for example, I suppose you could say.
It comes in very handy with practicing. It's a big part, because I'm one of those people that like I want to be good at something as soon as I pick it up. But you can't be. So like I've got to discipline myself to be able to practice properly, so I can become like as best as I can be, instead of just trying to just go in and then getting mad that I can't do it straight away. That's definitely been a big help, is the discipline and self-control in there.
I think like with young people in general, and I've noticed this, I was on a training thing for work today, and one thing that was kind of getting brought up is perseverance is a thing that's kind of dying out from a younger generation, in the terms of, I'm not even immune to this, like of when you kind of shy away from doing things if you don't get it first time, because we have that lack of humility of I don't want to see other people see me struggle, and I kind of difficulty of showing vulnerability in a way almost. I know that sounds a bit over dramatic when I say that.
Yeah, you don't really want to be seen learning something. You just want them to be seen as being good at it. Yeah, so there's so people miss out that extra step, or if they can't do it, they just don't bother completely.
Yeah, exactly.
It's definitely a downfall in some people's like musical journey, especially.
There's always a quote that I love hearing. It's don't let success get to your head, and don't let failure get to your heart. And I think it's like a nice balance of obviously like through life, right? And I bring this up every time, but I just kind of have to, because we always kind of come on to it. Is I kind of believe in the human mind can be corrupted by many forms of power, when it comes in many forms, like social status, like losing a lot of weight if you're heavy, something, you go from one extreme to another extreme, like money obviously. And I think we kind of have to keep ourselves balanced, right? Because absolute power corrupts absolutely, but absolute powerlessness does the same. So yeah, moving on. What was the first experience of music that you had that inspired you to take it up as a passion?
Well, my first experience of music in general was, well, I grew up with music like in the background of my life. It was always on wherever I was, in the car, when I was sleeping, when I was younger, like all the time. So when I got the offer to take up an instrument when I was in P5, I was like, oh yeah, I'll absolutely do it. There was a choice between a couple. I think it was like brass or the violin. And obviously, like, somebody came in and demonstrated, and I quite liked the sound of the violin. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Like, it wasn't something I knew I would be interested in, but it was, something I wanted to do at the time. I stuck with it for right the way through primary school, but I wasn't as invested as maybe I should have been. It was like, yeah, I did it, and yeah, I liked saying I did it, but I was never like, oh yeah, I do this. This is my absolute passion. It was like, yeah, violin's fun. I'll keep doing it. But I almost gave it up in first year.
Yeah.
It was actually my mum, who's normally like, no, you've got to stick at this. You're going to do it. You'll come out the better end for this. But she went, yeah, sure. If you want to give it up, give it up. And I was like, no, you're not meant to say that. No, don't say that.
Encourage me.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. So it was that was like, all right, I'm going to stick at it then. And I did. And then, a few years later, I found trad music. And
do you think she might have used reverse psychology on you?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I'm fully aware of that now. Oh, yeah.
So you mentioned that the violin, you actually play a few instruments from what I was looking up about you. I've seen you a cover do it with a guitar and stuff like that. So tell us a little bit what it's kind of like using multiple instruments and the kind of journey you have to go. Because I would imagine once you get used to something, it even though it's the same thing in a way, they have their own niche, these different instruments, right? And I would imagine even if you have experience with multiple ones, like there might be a time, like for example, maybe you're using guitar over violin. That might be a bad example because the violin's the first one you learned. But when you go back to like the original, do you ever like find muscle memory kind of weakens a little bit, or?
For me, no, because like I play all the time. Like I'm never without an instrument in my hand whatsoever. Like I took up the guitar when I was 14, so I took it up quite late compared to some people, because like I know people that have played it since they were 5, same age as I started playing violin. But so it like musically it's quite late. But I had it in my hands for up to 5 hours a day, every single day, because I was determined I was going to get as good as these like rock legends I was hearing, because different styles of music. I got into guitar through like hearing rock music, and then seeing somebody a few years older than me playing electric guitar at a school concert. I was like, oh, I have to learn how to do that. I really want to learn how to do that. So I just kind of got my first guitar in Christmas of second year, and I have not put it down since.
Did around that time, like you said, you were 14 when you took up the guitar, do you think that was at an age in your life where you were maybe, I'm not saying that you weren't exposed to different genres of music before, but maybe you took them on board more than obviously like the violin was just something that kind of fell into your lap in like a really early age? And
No, it was. The rock music was something I knew I wanted to play. Like, I went with that in mind. I was like, right, I'm going to learn all my AC/DC, my Led Zeppelin, my Metallica, Ozzy Osbourne, all of that. I knew that with my violin, it was kind of like, initially, up until even 4 years ago, it was like, yeah, it was played, it was on set, I was given tunes to play for my grades, I did them, it was fine. But with guitar at that time, I was like, right, I'm going for this. It wasn't even till 2017, after I joined a rock band with somebody, that I was invited to play in his trad band, which exposed me to trad music. I'd never heard it up until then. Like, it was a new thing for me. And I heard, like, the guy playing the fiddle in the band at the time, I was like, whoa, I didn't know it could be played like this. Because I'd never heard my teacher play it like that. Or if I had, he was just, he was my teacher. He could play like that. But somebody around about my age playing like that, I was like, oh, this is insane. I have to, like, put my mind to this and learn how to do it. It took a while. Took a long time, actually. Almost like I had to start again. Yeah,
well, I suppose that's like, that's quite a good thing to show maybe young people nowadays, right? Because, like they say, they see someone where they're at, but they never kind of look at the journey. Well, because the journey never really gets shown to them, right? Like, most people, comparison takes confidence away from anyone in terms of, if you compare yourself to someone that's, sold millions of albums or something like that, you're going to feel like shit about yourself because
Yeah.
you're not there yet, or you're still working towards, but you don't get well, you kind of do, but most of the time you don't get to see like the amount of graft that goes into that and the amount of like experiences people have to go through to even get to that stage, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I was also really bad for that because when I started, like, I was listening to CDs and albums of these people who have been playing professionally for years and have sold like thousands of copies of their albums and have got millions of plays on Spotify. And because I wasn't playing like them, I was like, oh, I'm no use at this. I can't do it. But like that was my main goal, was to try and play at that. I'm still not at that level yet because these guys are professionals. But it definitely helps to be able to be shown the journey to get there is so much easier than just being shown the end product and go, right, this is what you've got to get to. However you do is up to you.
Yeah,
it's hard.
What do you think about music in school? We've touched on this a couple times, and the general consensus seems to be. I actually bring this up because you mentioned it a little bit. There is like a teacher will only play one way, and it's kind of like, I don't want to say narrow-minded because it might not be on purpose, but it kind of shows you one avenue of music rather than music being quite a versatile, expressive thing, right?
No, I completely get where they're coming from. Like, I same thing. Like, because you get your instruments, have the one teacher that comes into school for basically your whole time. Like, I had the same fiddle teacher from right way through to P5 until he retired when I was in 5th year. I had another teacher for my 6th year who was actually taught by the guy that taught me. So it was actually very similar. It was strange. But yeah, he was a classically trained player and he was phenomenal. Like, I still see him now. We still get on great. But it was very one way of playing things. Like, it had to be his way, which I was taught, and the way for the exams. Like, yeah, it's good structurally, but for your own musicality, it doesn't work because people take to it different. Like, I play completely differently now as to what I did back then. And so do loads of people I know. Like, they've come away from their tuition and have just developed loads, like, instantly.
Do you think, like, the teaching might be like a foundation, and the way that individual music changes over time is a reflection of a person's personality or the experiences that they go through later on, well, not later on in life, but as they grow up?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, completely. Like, I will fully support people getting tuition. I taught myself guitar. Like, that was from YouTube, which is a great platform to teach yourself guitar. Not so much violin because there's not as many trad things. So playing the fiddle from YouTube doesn't work. It's like, it doesn't whatsoever. But getting instrument tuition in school is fantastic base layer. But when we went into lockdown last year, I started like getting lessons from all my favorite fiddle players because they were in lockdown as well. They were doing one-off lessons and like blocks, and I was like, oh yeah, please, I'll take some of that. So like, I was going on with all my favorite fiddle players. One guy in particular, Tom Callister from Meglear and Emar, my favorite fiddle player ever. I've had lessons from him from like last September up until quite recently, and it's been the best thing ever because he's shown me a completely new perspective of playing like his way, but also the way he was taught, which was also different to how he plays now, which just shows you can go whatever way you want depending on your personality and what you like listening to.
Do you enjoy like that kind of vast array of knowledge of like different kind of perspectives and that on music?
Oh yeah. To be honest, I'm like that with everything. I've got this like mindset that when I know something, I have to know everything about that one thing. Like I do that with all my things I'm interested in. I can't really help it.
Yeah. So you describe yourself as a folk musician from what I can see from your page. What drew you to the folk music?
Well, mostly because I'm very patriotic about my country. Pretty much. I love being Scottish. It's just like, it's ace, and I like the music that comes with it.
Yeah, we've came a long way since Trainspotting.
Oh yeah, we've but no, I like playing Scottish music. Folk music is like, it's one of my favourites. I used to play in rock bands, and I still love listening to all my rock music. And like, I haven't played in any recently, but my folk music kind of took away from seeing other people playing it, but I couldn't, and I'd never heard it before, and it just all came flooding to me at once, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is my favorite type of music. I don't really know why. I just love it. Like, it's just something so energetic, and I love seeing people like dance to it as well. It's great.
Do you think like music has an important role in culture? Like you were mentioning, the reason that you love folk is because we're in Scotland, and folk's quite a traditional Scottish brand of music, if you will.
Oh yeah, like music is one of the most important cultural things for anyone, anywhere. Like it's what, you know, they build foundations of cultures on. Like from anything back to like thousands and thousands of years ago, you still see like instruments being dug up from like, you know, archaeologists and stuff. Like it's insane. Music goes back as far as culture goes.
That's crazy to think. Like, I think there's a part of me that kind of forgets that because when I look back at history, I always tend to try and pick out these things that like they didn't have then that we have now. But music's one of that unique things which has always been around. It's still as powerful today as it was back then, and that kind of like blows my mind almost. I think that's such a like a powerful kind of entity within itself.
Oh, it is. It's crazy. Like it's been around forever. You're seeing people dig up like even just simple flutes that have been carved out of like mammoth tusks or just you know trees, bits of bark. It's insane. They've been around. It's been around forever.
So I was having, because I do a bit of research on guests and that before they come. I was having a look at your music page, and I was noticing that you'd done a bit of a little outline drawing, which kind of decided to give me the. I think we've already kind of covered this actually, but not intentionally. Is like, have you always been a creative person?
That was actually my sister that drew that.
Oh, was it?
Okay. Yeah, that was really cool actually. I had posted my cover of Scaryvore, the Take My Hands On, which I absolutely love, and it was the thumbnail of that video. She traced it and then gave it to me as a present afterwards. It was great. Like, it's absolutely amazing. I love that drawing. That's why it's on my profile photo. But no, that wasn't me. I'm useless at drawing.
Apologies for giving the wrong person credit.
Well, that absolutely goes out to her.
But yeah, have you always been a creative person in terms of, did you always know that you were going to do something creative, even before you took up the guitar and like violin proper serious and stuff like that?
I always wanted to, but I didn't know what I would do. Because I liked conventional art and drawing, but I was never good at it. I just enjoyed it, but that was like after primary 5, I'd say. Before that, I despised it, so it just kind of did a complete flip. But I always wanted to be like, you know, creative and do things, design things, but I didn't know what. It was just when I found my music and got more invested in it, I was like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do. I like doing this. I like being creative with it. Just everything.
So you made a music video. I remember I seen this. Tell us a bit about that. What is the process of going into making a music video? Making a song in general, I suppose.
Well, I actually started making my own songs over lockdown. It was one of my fiddle players who I actually got a lesson of later in lockdown, but had posted a tune with a challenge on it. It was Laura Wilkie from Canaris Quintet had posted the Taurus challenge as part of like her tunes. So it's a really tricky tune to play. I could barely do it at the time. I had to use a lot of technical editing to get that right.
Yeah, trust me, you should have seen the first episode of this podcast, but the amount of cuts in it.
But like I started getting into that. Like I laid a guitar track down for it, and then I played my fiddle over it, and I was like, oh, this sounds cool. I like this. I'm gonna add like a drum track, and I bought myself a MIDI keyboard and was like, oh, got some bass lines to it, and I just instantly fell in love with it. And then after that, I kind of went on to make some more tunes. And then a few in, I'd made this one. This was my first tune that I wrote myself, actually, like, that we put out. And making the song was good fun. There has to be like 30 tracks on it of just overlays of guitars, basses, fiddles. It was amazing. But the music video has to be the most fun part.
Yeah.
That I actually used my phone camera, and once again, my sister's creative talents were helping me. She was filming it, and we just decided to go down to the beach and just do as many stupid things as possible. Like the intro of the video is me standing on different levels of rocks, just counting in the song. It's I think that at one point I do like a Naruto run, and if you look close, I almost faceplant when I jump. I was quite close to knocking my teeth out.
Yeah, the beauties of editing. I suppose you couldn't edit the teeth part though, right?
No, that's still in there.
So, you know what kind of I've found since actually speaking to like people that are involved in music and stuff like that I find quite surprising, and this is just probably from an outside perspective, you know, from like doing podcasts and documentaries and that, I'm kind of always of the kind of searching like for factual evidence, if that's the right terminology for that. I could be way off, but you know where I'm in the ballpark somewhere. Whereas, you know, I come into this thinking like people must have to take so much time to think about how a song's going to be written and how the music video is going to go and all that and all this preparation. But every time I ask this, it's basically like a freestyle. Like people will take a couple chords and throw it up in the air, and then everything just kind of comes together in their imagination. You know what I mean? And that blows my mind. Like.
No, 100%. Like, I've spoken to a few people, like, what you call the more, complex styles of music, I say with, like, technical styles of metal or jazz or some things need a lot of, like, preparation and built on them. But stuff like pop music and folk music, you can just do whatever you want. Yeah. Like, I sometimes have no idea what I'm going into when I do it. I say, okay, I've got a tune, I've got a melody on my fiddle, or I've got a chord progression on the guitar. I just kind of like start doing everything with it. If I jump on my laptop, go on Logic, and I'll be like, oh, a synth would sound quite nice here. I'll just play it, and that's my first thing that's on it. It builds up, and over time, you've got an actual song. Mm-hmm. It's weird. Same with the videos. Like, I had no idea what I was going to do. You just kind of go down there and it's like, oh, I'll shoot something here. Something here. Is that
a surreal process?
It is actually, because when you start it, you've got no idea what you want. It's like, oh, this could go one of two ways. I could love it or I could absolutely hate it. 9 times out of 10, you absolutely hate it. That's why, like, artists you see have made about 10 times more songs than they've got out, because they never like them. Yeah. It just happens. But that one time you do something right and you're like, oh, this is great. This is brilliant, because you've no idea what it's going to be. And by the time you finished it, you're like, this is my masterpiece. I love this. I've just started out from nothing.
I think that's like one of the most kind of envious things I have of musicians is that patience. Because like you were just mentioning there, the amount of songs that will just get binned or, I mean, I've heard it from the other musicians that have been on here as well. It kind of shocks me in the sense of, I think I would be of the mindset of, not that I've wasted my time, but I'd be gutted that I couldn't get that time back for something that I don't like. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to have that kind of patience into that perseverance that we were talking about earlier, just persevering over again until you get the thing that sounds and looks right to the musician in themselves or the performer themselves is quite a powerful notion in my mind.
No, it's it takes a lot of like willpower to be able to keep going after you've done something that you end up hating.
Yeah.
There's no way you're getting that time back. And you could I've spent somewhere close to 30 hours on a project on my laptop just for me to just bin it.
Yeah.
Just because there was no saving it. It was awful. And there's nothing you can do. Like, it's quite heartbreaking, to be honest, seeing something you put so much work into just be like, nah, I don't like this.
Yeah. Have the people around you always been supportive of your music escapades, shall we say?
Oh, 100%. I don't think my family could be any more supportive. My friends as well. Like, it's fantastic. Like, they've always been like, oh, like, well, I'll send some people something to like preview it before I put it up, or say like I've got my group of people, my close friends and family that I send stuff to, and they've all been super supportive. It's been amazing, really.
I'd imagine that must be like big for you, right? Because like you said, there was times where you were thinking about giving stuff up and that, and obviously even though it was reverse psychology and all that we talked about in that, but I'd imagine that must be quite a comforting thing for you, knowing, because like we all have I don't want to say down moment, like, mental health's been like a massive thing that's been talked about over the last couple of years, especially with what's going on in that. But I'd imagine that's like a massive support for you and drives you to continue doing and to be better in yourself, I suppose.
Oh, it is really, because like I don't know what I'd do if my family wasn't supportive of my music. If they were just like, oh, like, there's other things you could be putting your time into. Like, I don't know what I'd do. But it's been a big help for my mental health as well, because it just gives me something to do. Like, I can sit at that for hours and not realize what I'm doing, and it just you're taken away from everything. I can sit in the dark. I tend to sit in the dark at night with my laptop on. That's what I like doing. Like, it's my time where I feel at most creative, even though I can't make a noise late at night.
Yeah.
My neighbours will kill me.
Yeah, the authorities will be around.
Yeah. But no, it's been a huge help for my mental health.
Well, just to elaborate on that point, we've always said we're trying to stay away from talking about coronavirus, but it just comes back around every time.
Can't help it.
So I would imagine music played it plays a massive part in your life anyway, clearly, but I would imagine it played a massive part in terms of keeping your well-being as best as it could through the whole kind of draconian 2020.
Oh yeah, it kept me sane anyway. It kept me from going completely insane. That's probably a better explanation for it. It kept me from going completely insane. There was times where like I was more focused on doing it than others. There were times where I just didn't want to do it because it was all I'd been doing for the past months. So the times I had like just released a tune on Instagram or Facebook, I would be like, right, I can't bring myself to do any more for a while. I'm going to wait at least a week before I even think about going back on. But yeah, it didn't help having to stop gigs.
Yeah.
That wasn't. Gigs is a completely like different ballpark. Playing in front of a live audience, you can't beat it.
Mm-hmm.
You get the energy back. Like, it's amazing. You know, like you've been at concerts as well. Like, when the band plays and the crowd gets the energy back, it keeps the band going. It keeps them, you know, like sounding amazing. But when you don't get that, when you're just recording in your room by yourself, like I had to be my own backing track, which was it's hard. It is hard. It's not the most encouraging of things.
That's one thing I couldn't. Not that I couldn't stand about lockdown, because there were a lot of things I couldn't go outside. That was one thing. But the one thing that was kind of weird to me was Zoom concerts. And I get people had to still do like music and work and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, but it was so alien. Do you know, like we were just talking about with the concerts and that and the energy and that, like. There's an atmosphere with music, right? That's one of the biggest things that music provides is atmosphere. Like, obviously people do music by themselves, but music's for everyone, right? Like, it's meant to be kind of shared, you know?
Yeah. No, Zoom concerts were really weird. I got to do a couple in the last year. There was one from my uni trad society, which I joined. We did a Christmas concert. You know, I did my wee video for that. We couldn't play at the same time because we weren't allowed to meet up, but I did a wee video and put it on. It was weird.
Yeah.
But it's stranger watching them because like some of my favorite bands had done live concerts, like Zoom concerts, where you paid like a $5 or a $10 ticket and you got to come like join the Zoom call and see. But it was weird. I didn't really know how to like react to it because, you know, when they're finished playing a set, you're like, oh, you love it. Do I clap? They can't see me. Yeah. Do I not? Do I just sit there and just pretend like it's a YouTube video? What do I do?
But I suppose, like, I mean, we're not indifferent to it in a way, right? Because, like you said, releasing a cover in that is in front of like a setup like this or something like that. Then you just. But I think it's because what the rest of what everyone was going through at the time, and knowing that, you know, you look outside, you're not going to see atmosphere. Everything was like some of the things that I'll take away from this, and not in a negative way, but some things that I'll never take for granted again is like back in January, February time, I was doing a walk of the town, and it was literally dead, and like there was maybe 2-3 people I'd see out in that walk, and you could just tell that we were in a bad place. Do you know what I mean? Like in terms of like this sucks, you know, to put it quite frank, you know, like. So tell us about some of the feelings when you first played live. I would imagine the anxiety was real.
Well, my first time ever playing live was like a school concert. I don't know if you count them. You know, they're like recitals. You get in front of like your parents and, you know, your pal's parents, and you sit and like 2 of us would play fiddle. It was nice. Like I remember it being fine. I used to get this thing where when I was nervous, my eyes would just start randomly watering. Yeah. Like I wasn't crying, but my eyes would just go, and I couldn't stop it. And I'd be standing on stage like, oh God, I can feel it coming. This isn't good. It was horrible, but
especially in primary school, there's no prisoners were crying.
No. Everyone's at you. But like my first time actually playing live with a band, actually going from that, I was terrified, and my eyes would just start watering on stage, but they didn't. But my first time ever playing live was with my first band, and we were at Loch Park near Keith playing a festival called For Folk's Sake. It was brilliant. Great name. But it was for like disabled people. It was for, you know, it's for people with learning disabilities.
Nice one, man.
It was amazing. It was great. Like it just happened to be the first gig I joined because there was a member of the band that was leaving to go off to uni. And I knew one of the guys in the band from currently practicing playing rock music with him. And we never got any gigs with that band, which was a shame because it was good fun. But then he asked, oh, there's a guitarist space open up in my trad band. Would you want to come and play for him? I was like, oh, yeah, sure. So it just happened to be the right time of my first gig was that one. And it was, well, I went on with him first to play some songs, and I was on electric guitar, and I could not tune it. I was sitting there on stage. He was prolonging this guitar, like acoustic guitar intro for at least 3 minutes. I'm sitting there with my tuner on the floor, like, oh man, I can't get this in tune. I swear it was in tune before I started. No, it was just awful. I ended up playing. We just ended up going off the stage, and I was like, you know what? I can do this later. But when the four of us went on, I had my other guitar. It was all good. If someone was actually in tune, and it was great. Really enjoyed playing the first gig.
That's crazy how Panic's you think is meant to help you, but panic just makes things worse.
Oh, it makes things 10 times worse. Yeah, I'm sitting there. I probably could have tuned it if I wasn't you know, in front of people and there was guys in the crowd that were getting annoyed. They were like, oh, you should have tuned it before. I was like, I swear I did.
Yeah. But no, that's great, man. We were actually thinking about doing a disability roundtable on this podcast at some point, and we were talking about like a lot of things that kind of, I don't want to say well, no, it is discriminating against disabled people, but it's leaving them out of the equation, if that makes sense. Like a lot of buildings, like, you know, disability access is not there and stuff like that, and I don't know the actual kind of ins and out of it for gigs, but it's great that there was like an event, because obviously so how were they as a crowd? Did they enjoy it? I would imagine that it was like a great thing for them to experience and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I from what I saw, they had a great time. Like, it's been a yearly thing for a while now. So there was like groups of people that would like look forward to this and come to it every year, and it was great seeing like it was a great first crowd to play in front of. They weren't overly judgmental. At the same time, they gave the same like energy back to you because they were invested in it. It was fantastic.
So I would imagine, did you say that it was for learning disabilities and stuff like that? So I'd imagine it was a lot more like I myself, so I'm on the autistic spectrum and stuff like that. So I'd imagine it was like a lot more sensory and all that kind of stuff that they're kind of taking into account for it. And that, how did they deal with like the noise of music and stuff? Was
actually, like, the speakers were just really quiet. We didn't have a drum kit, I don't think. As far as I can remember, the drummer was just playing on a cajon. But it was actually like a fairly nice volume. It wasn't like overbearing, but it was enough that they could definitely hear it over everything they were doing. So I think it was actually quite nice for them.
Yeah, that's great, man. That must have been, after you'd done the gig, just going back to you for a second, that must have been quite like a cathartic experience, and also a anxiety relieving experience of being like, I'll never be that anxious again. I'm sure like there's still anxiety that comes with it and that, but it's probably never hit that height than the first one, I would imagine.
Oh no, not at all. First gig's the worst. They say that every time. So if everything went bad on the first gig where I couldn't tune my guitar and I just straight up couldn't play for the very first time I was there, then it wasn't going to go that wrong again. I've never opened my case and my guitar hasn't been in it. I've heard of some people that have gone like traveled hours for a gig, opened their case and their guitar's not in it. Never done that. Fingers crossed I don't ever do that. But no, first gig's definitely the worst.
I suppose the podcast equivalent to that is on one of the episodes, the camera died, hence why I kind of look over it again. And we had to put like a background screen on, and you know, some people don't mind that, but for me, like, because I hadn't formatted the camera, which I just done before we came on today, like I was really angry at myself. And I think when you're involved in like media or music or whatever it may be, you become your own biggest critic, I would imagine.
Yeah. You are your worst critic, like, completely. You're the only one that will ever consistently tell yourself that you're not doing it right.
Yeah. And like, I think, you know, because I've learned a lot about video editing and that since starting this and whatnot. I mean, I had, you know, a couple experiences with it and that, but I wasn't probably the level I am now of doing this for a couple months. But on the first episode, for example, the audio was like a second off, whereas now, like, you know, that's never happened again. I said it wouldn't happen again. It hasn't happened again, just because I can't take embarrassment. But so yeah, one of the things that I noticed, one of the videos that I watched was a mix that you did of folk music and techno, I believe it was. I wanted to know how that came about, because that seems like very different ends of the spectrum of the kind of music.
Well, it absolutely was. It could not be further apart from each other. I actually took inspiration, though, from a band that's already exists. Well, there's two bands, actually. The tunes was from a band called, the first tune was from a band called Peatbog Fairies, who are quite, like, techno-based as well. They've got quite a lot of electronic samples in their music. And it was in, like, the style of a band called Nightworks, which is just techno with bagpipes. Yeah. It's just straight-up techno. I saw them live at Spayfest once. It was absolutely amazing.
I suppose Scotland's famous for like its nightclubs and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
right? So it's okay. Maybe it's still affected the culture, right? Maybe it's the new wave culture.
No, it completely is. Like, this band was just synthesizers and electronic stuff everywhere. Like, the bass was that heavy, it was bouncing the speakers off the stage. Like, I would look at the bass speaker, look at like the musicians on stage, and look back, and it's like moved a good like foot and a half. It's just working its way off the stage. It was that strong. But then they just threw bagpipes in the middle of it. It was amazing. But no, that tune was like, I wanted to give it a shot. It was like I think that was the third tune I ever made on GarageBand. I was on at the time. I was like, oh, I wonder what it'd be like if I made some techno. Because I'd never done it before. I don't even listen to techno. I don't know what made me do that. But I was like, okay, well, if I just add some like powerful drum beats and, play some fiddle over the top of it. It worked the second time round. The first time round, I learned the hard way of you've got to listen to your mix on multiple things before you put something out. Because it sounds great on my very expensive studio headphones. But as soon as you play it out a phone speaker or normal headphones, it just breaks your ears.
Yeah. I suppose better breaking the teeth though, right? So yeah, like, are you of like the belief of that? Like, I always reference this Dave Grohl quote. This is like from an outside perspective. I'm quite a big Dave Grohl fan. But one thing that stands out to me, like just taking his music out of it for a second, I actually really resonate. And I think this isn't just to do with music. I think this is with anything that you enjoy doing. Is he was trying to say that you don't have to be good to do music. It's like, if you want to do music and you suck as a band, suck together in the garage and enjoy it. Don't just be like, because I think in today's world, obviously there's a kind of reality TV connected with music now. With such things as like, Britain's Got Talent and X Factor and stuff like that. And I always remember watching these shows like growing up, and people would be like absolutely devastated. Like, and it's like, if you think of some of the people that are locally on like Spotify and that now, like, they would love to just get to like the last 16 and be on TV for that kind of exposure, where people are like, wait a minute, I'm not getting $1 million contract, and then breaks it into tears, like.
Yeah, like there's a lot of perfectionism in music now. There's so much of it. Like, they say, oh, you have to sound perfect or you can't play music, you're not good. But if you enjoy it, like as Dave Grohl says as well, just if you suck as a band together, it's great. Like, there's nothing that stops you enjoying it. But people really have to get away from this perfectionist like mentality. I'm guilty of it myself. Like, I've gone through hundreds of versions of mixes and like, not been happy with them because there's one thing that doesn't sound 100%. But that's the humanity of it. Like, no person can make it sound perfect. That's only like machines that can do that. It's when people lie about using machines is when it bothers me. Like, a lot of people now are against autotune. Yeah,
I was about to say, you're talking about autotune and stuff like that with the reference you just made.
Yeah, like a lot of people are against it. I've even worked with people. Like, I'm currently producing for a guy over in Sydney who I met while I was out there. Great connection opportunity. I don't know how I just fell into that. Ended up in a music shop once and we just chatted and I kept in touch with him. But he hates autotune. And I had to convince him, let me put it on your songs, because it adds an extra layer that people listen to. You don't have to put it on strong, and as long as you don't lie about it not being on there, you're absolutely fine. It's when people start saying like, oh no, I'd never use autotune. You hear it. Because when you get to when you've been producing for a while, because I've been going for like a year now, I can hear when anyone's got it on. And when people say, oh, I've never used autotune, I've never used it in my life, it's like, no, you have. It's right there. Just don't lie about it. Nobody cares if you use it. Just don't lie about it.
Yeah, it gives off a bad look, doesn't it? It's like you've got something to hide. Yeah. I think, was it Britney Spears used to get accused of it quite. I know there's a lot more going on with her right now. And Kanye West, too, again, there's probably a lot more going on. I mean, autotune's like the last thing that we're talking about with these people now, but like back in the day, like 2010 or something like that was when it was like a big deal. But you're right. Like, I think, if who cares what people think about your music as long as you're being honest with it. It's not like, oh well, I've added all this and that, but I haven't, and then just put something out there, and you know what I mean. Like, I get where you're coming from. I think I kind of can't. It sounds a bit cliche, but I can't stand fake. Do you know?
Yeah. Oh, completely. And it's the same fake that people now use music and all forms of art just as a product.
Yeah.
Like, people just, I think calling art content is the worst thing that's happened to the internet so far. Like, it's like, oh yeah, we need content out and content this, and it's out all the time, quality and quantity. It's not feasible. You can't do that.
It's almost like the kind of beginning of us aligning with machine, right?
Yeah.
Because content is kind of like, it's almost like a conveyor belt now of this just needs to get out so we can get numbers, and I think that's how a lot of stuff works now. I guess we're kind of becoming a bit robotic in that approach. And I love how, like, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, me and my co-host, who's actually working today, hence why he's not here. But we were talking about the two words that are most common on the internet, and it's exposed and content.
Doing things for exposure, that's a forbidden word.
I go back to, like, there's not a day, like, I'm quite bad for not sitting on my phone, but, like, you know, you go into YouTube and you watch a tutorial and you get sidetracked, and the next thing you're watching, like, this video with exposed and bunch of exclamation marks and stuff, and you just don't know what you've done with the last 2.5 hours of your life. No,
YouTube's a rabbit hole. If you sit there for too long, you'll end up in the strangest of places.
I seen a podcast recently where a guy was like, I think it's better to produce for social media rather than consume, and I agree with that. But I also think to myself, if I'm producing, I'm making other people consume, so I feel part of the problem with that. So then I just ignore the entire problem and go, I don't want to feel like a bad person right now.
No, there's no way of escaping it. When you're in the loop, you're in. Like, that's it. You're either consuming it or making stuff for people to consume. You know, you feel just as bad either way.
Yeah. Just go back to the lockdown, just very briefly. What did you make of the celebrity collage with John Lennon's Imagine? Did you see this?
It was questionable.
Yeah, I found it quite patronising.
It was very, I'm unsure whether they had good intentions or they were just doing it because someone told them to. Like, the people that told them to do it either had good intentions or, once again, they just wanted a bit of content from people.
I think like it's a good thing to just touch on there from what we were talking about a minute ago with the whole content. And I think, I don't want to call it like intention seeking or something like that, because I think it's more the name of the game in Hollywood, because it was a lot of Hollywood people that were on this video. I can't even remember. I think Tom Hanks was in it. I've got nothing against Tom Hanks, but like I just kind of seen it. I was like, really? Like, no one wants to see that right now. Do you know what I mean? No one wants to see, like, these big mansions and, like, oh, we're all in this together and we're all feeling just as sad as you right now. And I was like, no.
Yeah, these millionaire Hollywood stars are just coming to you singing this song and, oh, we're all in this together. We'll all get through these hard times. In the backdrop, there's their, like, jacuzzi with, like, spiral staircase in the background. They're like, oh, no, we're not really in this together. You've got your completely different life.
Yeah, like, I think I can understand. Like, I'm not saying that people that are in a privilege is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but, like, very much specific here, can't have, like, bad times or experience bad mental health through the times that we're in. Everyone can, of course. But I just think that they didn't read the room very well.
No, they didn't in the slightest. No, like, everyone experiences mental health problems at some point. Like, to say they wouldn't would be insensitive for the people that were watching it. But for them to also do that was also quite patronizing, for us normal folks who aren't in $1 million mansions.
Striving to get there, though, so you never know. 10 years down the line, we might be doing something like that. But yeah, well, no, we're talking about the balance. You know how we're talking about power corruption. We're not going to get to that. I'm not singing John Lennon's Imagine on, like, the next, I don't know what it's going to be, U Cloud or whatever.
Oh no, I'd rather not.
Yeah. So I seen a post you put up of a song that you made, and it was dedicated to your grandmother being in hospital.
Yes.
And the point of the question that I kind of wanted to ask you on this is, music quite obviously is a big form of external expression of the internal, if that makes sense, of, like, what you're feeling inside and expressing it to the world. Can you touch on that a little bit and how that works for you?
Well, actually, that song I wrote for my granny when she was in hospital at the end of 2019, and I came down with really bad food poisoning at the time, so I couldn't go and visit her, and that was my way of coping with it. Like, I wrote this tune and dedicated it to her. She loved it, which made me feel great, but like, it just kind of sat there for months, and people just, like, listened to it. She loved it, but she's actually passed away recently.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, mate.
It was thanks. So it's it was a nice send off, so it was great. But they played that tune at her memorial. I never really thought about them doing that, about people doing that, until she did pass away. And then people said, "Oh, we have to play your tune at the crematorium," and I was like, "Oh yeah, I didn't think of that. That's gonna be hard." So that it was hard to listen to
for you.
Because it was my way of coping with her being in hospital, but then having her passed away and being in the crematorium, like hearing the song playing, it was it was quite hard.
Yeah, I'd imagine, like you said, with it being kind of late notice that you knew that was going to happen. And I suppose you can never really prepare for something like that, right? Because the loss of a loved one's always going to be hard hitting in whatever way, shape, or form it comes, and obviously to add that into the mix. So yeah, I'm sorry for your loss, dude.
That's all right, man.
So the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was Murray's local scene. So this is kind of taking you out as a first person musician and putting you into like the third person perspective. We're obviously going to have to rewind pre-pandemic because obviously music has just kind of opened up again. But so going back to like 2018, 2019, I would imagine you've been to gigs, whether that be, in Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen, or even local to Moray. Like I remember like places like the Droofy Cobbler or even the Beach Bar, may it rest in peace. Used to host local talent a lot, and I'm even seeing now like people like Scott Ramsey, who's coming on Sunday and that, like doing gigs in Inverness, and it seems like more local venues, pubs and that are kind of getting into hosting music and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on that? And who do you enjoy watching the most, without putting you on the spot there?
Well, I love the music scene in Moray. It's fantastic. There's a bit of everything because my main focus is, well, for my personal taste, is folk and rock music, and it's everywhere.
Yeah,
in Moray. Like I used to play in rock bands, and there's a great rock band from Forest Way, Bad Actress.
Oh yeah, I was literally about to bring them up. They won the competition in Inverness. Yeah.
Like I've known those guys for years, and they're great people. Like I'm actually going to see them in Aberdeen when I go back.
They're on tour this summer, aren't they? I was going to ask them to come on the podcast, but I thought maybe with the tour coming up they might be a bit busy. But 2022,
we'll get them in. Eventually. But no, they're ace. They're like top of the rock scene at the moment. Like you can't really top them from like round here. They're ace. But the trad scene as well is fantastic. But it's all up from Fochabers way.
Yeah.
Like Lossie in school, in school especially, and in Elgin, there's some, but it's not as much as up in Fochabers, because that way you've got like James Anderson, who's been a huge influence on the folk scene up there. He's a fantastic fiddle player. He taught in Milnes for years, and all the best players that come out of Moray come from there.
Yeah,
almost all of them come from like Fochabers area, so they host a lot of like trad gigs as well. So you're on about the like venues quite local. The Fochabers Institute, I've seen quite a few bands in there actually. I saw Scarivore twice, who have been one of my favorite bands to see live. I've seen them probably about 8 or 9 times. They're great. But like I've seen a lot more pubs wanting stuff in, like the Droofy Cobbler, as you mentioned. I've played in there once. It was great. It was good fun. And it's a nice venue, a really nice venue. I haven't been there since it's reopened. I need to head back.
I think it might actually be called something different now.
That's a possibility.
I'm not sure. I remember the first time I went in there, I kind of thought I was in Lord of the Rings for a second, because the chairs were a bit bigger and everything. Bacon and maple syrup crisps cost £1.60, and I was like, what is going on here? But so yeah, I think the great thing about Moray, right, there's a very big, diverse range of musicians about. Like you were mentioning Bad Actress, and I think of like bands like New Mode as well. And
from Birkhead.
And so on and so forth. Yourself, Scott Ramsey. I had Chris Grant on a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's great to have that, because I think I know this can sound cliche, but I think it really does boost morale of the area, right? Because obviously, especially with what we've kind of went through the last 18 months and whatnot, and I think it does affect culture, right? Like cities and towns and that can be defined music and their culture. You think of Liverpool and the northwest of England and stuff like that with the Beatles, and I guess Manchester with like the Happy Mondays and the Stone Roses, and you can name a bunch of bands from there and stuff like that. So it does have a massive impact on economies, culture, just an identity, if you will.
Yeah, like a lot of people don't realize that they're more connected to their culture than they think they are. So when like music stops and gigs stop and they can't go to see them anymore, like everything almost stops progressing. Like people, lose the will to go out and do things, because my weekends back in 2019 onwards, I was like a concert like 3 or 4 a month. Like it was like a big part of what I enjoyed doing, and for that to just completely stop, it was really strange. Because a lot of people think like, well, yeah, it's your identity of the place you come from is the bands that come from there more than they think. They think that.
Yeah, well, exactly right. Like, I suppose it's the music organically grows from the environment itself, which is like a really powerful thing to think about, especially how there's so much different kind of genres and styles that we've managed to kind of produce in this area. I honestly believe that like the music scene of this area is one of the strongest thing the area has going for it. Like, I honestly believe that, like, the amount of, and this is, obviously before, I'm sure it'll come back now that things are opening up and that, but I remember like sitting back to myself and thinking like, we've got like 15, 20 bands that are getting like, over 500 likes on Facebook and that. And I know like it's not all about likes and stuff, and people might see that as like a, I don't know, like a small number to begin with, but it really isn't, especially locally.
Oh, locally it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you hit over 500, 400, 500 likes, you're like, oh wow, this is great. Because like my old band, we had about 2,000 on our Facebook page. It was insane. That was a lot for like our local area. And the one I'm at just now is sitting at about 450, I think. And even that is like, it's insane. So yeah, there's a lot of like bands that come from this area that are actually doing quite well for themselves locally.
Do you ever have to, how we were talking about the kind of corruption of the mind and stuff like that earlier? Do you ever have to, I find myself having to rein myself in with stuff like social media where like someone's like the podcast page, because I know I don't do it for that, but I'm instantly drawn to it when I see it. It's like, oh, who's liked it now? Do you know what I mean? And I really have to rein myself away, because my ego can be easily very inflated.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, because that's when the product's going to get worse, and that's when I'm drifting away from what I actually started it for, was to talk to a different, diverse range of people and what they do and whatnot.
No, I completely get you, because, well, I can spend weeks on something, it's something I'm proud of. Imagine you do exactly the same. You do this, you're proud of it. You put it on, you're like, right. So I could be sitting there for an hour just refreshing, like, oh, who's seen it? Who's liked it? Who's hearted it? Come on, somebody. And then like someone pop up and like, oh yes, who's this? And you can't stop yourself.
Yeah, it's a dopamine rush, right? It's almost an addiction.
It is.
It's actually crazy. Like, I remember we did an episode of social media, and I did have to kind of swallow my pride whilst a bit of this. But when I was a bit younger, I used to really enjoy my birthday coming around, because I knew that people were going to post on my page happy birthday, which is very, very narcissistic when I say that now. But looking back on it, I just think it's just the world that we live in now. And I think we've all done it at one point where we've posted something and we're like, oh, this is, we're going to get 20. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter. Do you know what I mean? Like, it does, but it doesn't, like, it's good that people are seeing your stuff, but it shouldn't be the thing that gives you joy. Do you know what I mean? Like, the thing that should give you joy is actually getting out there and being proud of your work. So I do see how people easily kind of slip into the whole influencer type mindset of, like, I had a guy from America reach out to me last week via email talking about like doing product reviews and stuff like that with this. And first of all, like, I don't really want to be doing deals abroad, especially when we're only like at 50 subscribers or something like that. It seems a bit too good to be true. But at the same time, it's like, I'm not really doing this to review products. I suppose like there was paid promotion or something sponsored, that's fine, but I don't want to like spend a whole talking about like a new felt tip pen or something. I want like have like interesting people on from different backgrounds and whatnot.
Oh yeah, like no, I can imagine like everything nowadays is about, oh, how many likes are you going to get from this one thing, like, and then looking at other people's, it's like, oh, they've got more likes than I do. Why is that? What are they doing better? But most of the time, it's not that they're like significantly better or doing anything much different. It's just that like more people have seen it just through pure luck.
Yeah.
But like Instagram's new feature which I've started doing and I like a lot is you can hide the like count from people. Like, you can, if people want to turn it off, they can turn it off. So I've turned off mine because, to be honest, it's like nobody else's business.
Do you get a more organic audience like that, do you think? Because I think a lot of people will like stuff when they see the amount of likes that it has.
Yeah. That is one thing I've noticed, is that it is less, but I'm not bothered because nobody can see how much it is.
Yeah.
Because if everyone could see and it was less, I'd be like, oh no, what am I doing? What's going wrong? But nobody can see. They're just, I don't know, they just kind of like don't, I guess. I've probably been guilty of doing it myself. Go past something I can't see and I'm like, oh, scroll past that.
The new digital age, right? What do you think? What's your take on I literally ask this every single Musicians for Moray episode, but I think it's quite important because I think music is a very physical thing, right? It's a very in-person communicative thing, and I think over the last 18 months especially we've realised how much personal communication is important to us as a species. But what do you think of the likes of Spotify and SoundCloud?
I love Spotify, and like I use it all the time.
Same. This podcast on Spotify, so I've got to stop going so hard in the paint at Spotify, but they're going to take this podcast off of here. So,
no, I love Spotify and all like music streaming services. They do a great job in letting people hear music they would have never heard before.
Yeah, that's true.
It does that amazingly well. Like, and they discover artists and new songs. You know, they can boost somebody's career from what would have been nothing to millions. It's amazing just from being recommended or, you know, put in a playlist. Like their algorithm, it's great. But at the same time, they know that they're good.
Yes.
And they can take full advantage of that.
And they know that they hold the cards pretty much all the time. Yeah.
They're like, okay, you're on our site. You play by my rules or you're off.
Yeah.
You're like,
much.
Okay, I have to kind of comply with this.
Yeah.
Or no listens for me.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, like you said, there's a very big positive and there's a very big negative to it. I think the negative that we've touched on a few times on these kind of episodes is I think the stuff of like tour buses and that is a dying trend, which is a real shame.
It's a shame. Tour buses are cool.
Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the film Almost Famous, where it follows like a 70s band around. He's like a music reporter and that. It's actually a really good film. It's about following like a rock band around in the 70s and the kid pretends to be a journalist for Rolling Stone, and it's actually a really good film. But I think that kind of experience of touring like a country and stuff, I think it is kind of dying out a little in the sense of, you know, it's, you know, Spotify and the listens. I know it's kind of peanuts what they pay and stuff. I've heard. Yeah. I can't confirm or deny. Dismal. But at the same time, as a consumer, it's great, right? Because like you said, you get to explore every, you know, corner of the earth basically for music. And it used to be that you needed a record deal to be quite a big musician, whereas now you have like this platform where you can get loads of people listening to it. So it does have its faults, and there probably is ways that it can be improved. But I still think it's just how the times are going, right? Everything is going digital, so music included, I suppose. But that was one thing that I was quite petrified about when I seen Zoom concerts. I was like, I hope these don't stay. I hope these just get canned when everything opens up again. You know?
Yeah, here's hoping. I don't think anyone will be doing any more of them anytime soon, when avoidable, because they're fun, but it's no different to watching a YouTube video with a band that's got a proper setup. You know, I could watch like these guys playing live, and supporting them and like making sure they can actually get through this with some money in their pocket so they can continue it. But at the same time, it's not the same. It's not the same. So like the bands that I watched didn't charge their full ticket price, which was perfectly reasonable. But I've seen bands that did like charge their full ticket price, and you're like, whoa, no, I'm watching you on the screen. It's not the same.
So a couple last ones for you before we let you go. Appreciate the time today as always. So you are from Moray, but you're currently temporarily back. You now reside in Aberdeen, obviously for university and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How's that been for you in terms of the move? Because I would imagine it's quite not a culture shock, because it's still the same culture, but I would imagine like it's obviously a busier place in that. And has it led to any more kind of opportunities for your music being in a kind of more populated city and stuff like that, rather than in a remote location like we are in Moray?
It's been really weird because the past year I haven't really left my flat much because I couldn't. Like, I live with one of my mates from school who's fantastic, but like it's a 2-bedroom place and my workspace is about 3 feet from my bed. So it's not fun like when you're cooped up in there for the entire time, and because everything was shut, I couldn't leave. So there wasn't really much like experiences I could get for the first like 10 months of living there. It was only towards the very end when, you know, I actually got to meet the people from the Trad Society. Well, actually, the Trad Society, now I forget, now I remember, it was great. Like, I found them through just a Facebook share on the uni page, and I was like, oh, Trad Society, didn't know that was a thing. I'll absolutely go, like, see if I can get in that. They're great people, absolutely, love them to bits. They let me in, and we've been playing tunes on Zoom, which has been weird.
Yeah. I'm tired of this Zoom stuff, man. It's got to stop soon. All the restrictions are lifted. Why is everyone still doing Zoom?
I don't know. It's like trying to play sessions with other people on Zoom. Like, you know, everyone's in front of a different screen, and you can't exactly play together because, you know, latency is a thing, and it'll break everything. So you've got to like mute yourself, or everyone else mutes themselves actually, and you've got to play and hope other people are following along with you because you've got no idea what's going on. It's the weirdest thing. It's so strange, but they were nice. It was nice to meet them. But towards the end of that, I got out, started meeting them in person, got to play a gig with them at the Bonnet Chord Centre in Aberdeen, which was good fun. It was my first gig in a while.
Was that kind of anxiety put up again because of the time off? Obviously, no fault of your own.
No, it actually wasn't like. I'm normally one to fully admit when I get like nervous or anxious about something, but I genuinely wasn't. I was more excited than anything. Like my nerves have been completely disappeared. Like I've played loads of gigs. I've played in front of like 3,000 people at festivals. I've done loads of folks' weddings. Like all the nerves that I get from first time playing are completely gone. Big gigs I still get like, will I mess this up? I really don't want to mess this up. Like especially,
I suppose it's new territory, right? If you do it's to a similar crowd, you kind of know what's going to be, but obviously bigger, more unpredictable, and that we're kind of intimidated by the unknown sometimes.
Festivals and weddings are the big ones. Like you really don't want to mess up at one of those.
Yeah,
festivals.
There's a lot of drunk people there, man.
It's more so the first dance at the wedding. It's very intimidating.
Oh yeah, because it's such like a big moment for like.
If you mess that up, you will never get forgiven for that.
But a lot of the musicians have said that, funnily enough, that they didn't have like a readjustment period of like playing live again and that, and it kind of feels like the analogy of riding a bike, of like you don't forget it once you've kind of went through the initiation period, I suppose you would call it.
No, you don't. Well, I certainly didn't. I was like right back into it. I was like, right, as many as I can. Let's go. Fire all the gigs off. I'm missing them. I've got to make up for a year and a half's worth of stuff in like as quick as possible. But no, like there was no readjustment period. It was just nice to get back. Like over the last few months of lockdown, I taught myself the Irish drum, the baran. So it was my first time ever playing that at a gig as well, because my lead instrument, my fiddle, was being played by like two other people that they'd obviously been there for a lot longer, so they knew all the tunes off by heart, which I hadn't learned them all yet. So there's someone else who was playing the guitar. I was like, okay, two guitarists can sound a bit off if you don't do it right, especially if our playing styles are different. So I pull out my wee party trick and just get the baran, because it's like, oh yeah, I can just do this instead. It's like my cheat way out. Like I'd only been playing it for a while, but I was good enough to play it at a gig, so I was like, oh yeah, you can play a fiddle and you can play a guitar. I'll just jump on my third instrument and, you know, like just jam out.
I would imagine the amount of instruments you've got now, you can play like 3 hours alone. It's just, well, you might have heard of the triangle.
I've got quite a collection actually. Over my time, I've had about 10 guitars. 5 acoustic and 5 electric. I don't have that anymore because I've had to sell a couple, and there was one I sold recently which was like it was a Jackson Flying V, which wasn't really my style anymore. So I traded that and bought myself a banjo, because I really wanted a banjo. It was a tenor banjo, so it's actually played like a fiddle.
Right, okay.
Because it's tuned in fifth, so it's got the same notes as a viola, but it's the same idea as a fiddle, and you can pick it like a guitar. So it was a perfect instrument for me. So I was like, oh, take one from here, take things from here, and, you know, play the banjo. So, and I actually use that in my music now. I didn't use my other guitar, but
it's great that you've used the time to add stuff to your arsenal without sounding sinister with saying that, you know.
No, I like doing that. I like being able to do everything which is it's a blessing and a curse sometimes, because it's a blessing because I like being able to do it and I can just take it and be like, oh yeah, I can do this, or I can do this. But it's a curse that if I put my mind to something, I can't get rid of it. Like there was one.
You get like obsessions and stuff like that.
100%. That's the only reason I can play the guitar to the standard I can, is purely because I'm like, oh, I'm not going to put this down until I can play it like as best as I can play it. So I practiced for like 6 hours a day for like 5 years just to like catch up on everything that I'd missed. But there was one point last year where I had my mind set on learning the tin whistle. And I was like, right. It just came to me one day. I heard somebody playing it on YouTube and I was like, oh, a tin whistle. So it was my birthday present last year. It was my 19th. So I was like, I got a tin whistle. So I started playing that and I'm teaching myself. And I was like, no, you sat it, because I don't play woodwind instruments. I play string instruments. But I was like, right, I'm going to keep going. I'm still no better than I was back then, but I should probably get lessons for that, actually. But the pure obsession of just wanting it and then just to be able to say that I can do it. It's
Would you say that's your biggest strength?
Yes, and it's also my biggest weakness, because if I it's my biggest strength because it lets me focus on things, but it also lets me focus on just that. Yeah, which is not good. There's other things like... Are you
very tunnel visioned when it comes to stuff like that?
Yeah, completely tunnel visioned. I don't mean to be. I'm trying not to be, but I just can't help it. Like when I started doing my producing stuff, like I was, supposed to be finishing my college work. I got it finished eventually. I passed it all right, but like I forgot about it for like 2 months because I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this producing stuff. I'm gonna get my college stuff's still sitting.
I actually have a life outside music.
You just kind of forget. Well, I just kind of forget sometimes. So no, it's great because it lets me focus on things and diverse myself and become more like well-rounded musician. But at the same time, I really need to learn how to focus on multiple things.
I'm sure you'll get there though, right? Like
I hope so.
I think, like you said, it can be a strength and a weakness, but I think it's a good strength to have because you come across to me. I mean, this is the first time that I've met you in person and that, but you come across to me as someone that really works hard at what they're doing and someone that will just keep going no matter what obstacle comes in front of them. And I really admire that.
Oh, thanks. No, I really appreciate that. Like there have been a couple of times where I've really almost completely given up. There was, actually, I was speaking about it earlier, one time last year where I spent close to 30 hours on a project and I just ended up binning it. It was the most disheartening thing ever. But it took me a couple of weeks to recover from that and be like, okay, sit down and try something else. And it was actually the product of that was the music video that you saw, the tune with the music video, which was probably my favorite thing I've ever done.
So it's weird how that can turn around, man. Like you can go from one extreme of, and then this euphoria, the other side of like I've actually, that's exactly how I pictured it. Like I got the intro sent from my filmmaking friend who recorded the intro and that, and like we spent like a day recording it, which it's like it's like 37 seconds. People don't actually realize how much work goes into this kind of stuff. I thought we were going to be like in for 15 minutes and be gone. And then like I'd said to him at this very table what the idea that I had, and then he sent it through last night and I watched it and like had the copyright free music off of YouTube library. Very useful tool if you're thinking about doing I don't know, like background noise or something. But it came through and I was like blown away. I was like, wow, this is actually something that I imagined and like put effort into. Obviously my filmmaking friend filmed it and edited it and stuff, but it's there. Like this came from out of nothing to like a physical actual thing, and that's something that I'm very easily impressed, but kind of blows my head off really that like that can happen, when you give creativity time.
Oh yeah, like it's amazing what you can do with some time and just willpower to get something done. Like the first time I ever thought about doing something, I was like, okay, I wanted a fiddle and guitar part. To me, that was enough because I knew nothing about it. Like I've just finished making a song of my own, which I actually like wrote lyrics to. It's the first song I've ever written, but like so much has come out of that I did not expect. I went in with like a chorus and one verse, and I've got like a full 3.5 minute song at the end of it. And sometimes even I just sit back in there and go like, how did this happen? Like you saying with your intro, like you sit there first, you start with nothing or like one simple idea, and then like, you know, however long time later you've come out with something, you're just like, oh my god, this is mad. I don't know how I managed this.
If you could describe your music style in 3 words, what would it be?
Or
what would the 3 words be?
Passionate. That's a good one. You've got me stumped now. Passionate, enthusiastic, and perseverance. I'd probably go with the 3 of mine, because it took a while.
What's your plans for the future, dude?
Well, actually, I've got something quite fun in the works. That song I just spoke about, which I actually wrote for my girlfriend as a Valentine's Day present, which is, I can't top that.
Yeah.
The best thing I've ever done, and I will never be able to top that, and she knows it. She got it all early. But I actually got contacted by a guy on Instagram who found me on the Discover page, which was insane to me because I didn't think I'd ever be there. And he's currently, after like a few conversations, is producing all my songs. He lives in Philadelphia.
Wow.
It's insane.
It's crazy though, how music just makes you travel the world, even without traveling, right?
Yeah. Like I've traveled, over lockdown, I've been producing for a guy in Sydney and a guy producing my songs over in Philly. Like this stuff is more indie pop, which I've haven't come away from trad, but I also really like my indie pop stuff, like Lauv, Jeremy Zucker, Quinn 92, Laney, all these guys who I just adore listening to. I decided, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I've got hopefully an EP coming out by next year.
Nice one, man. With
this guy, hopefully get down to one of my mates in Glasgow and film some stuff. Like shout out Startling Studios in Glasgow. Boy, Rowan Duncan, absolutely brilliant. But yeah, I'm hoping to get some of that out by next year. Hopefully by summer, have a summer song.
Nice one, man. Yeah, the sound of the summer, right?
Oh, you're just hoping.
So the last kind of question I have for you is, what does music ultimately mean to you as a person?
Pretty much everything I do is now somehow revolved around music. It's kind of become such a big part of my life that I could not survive without it. It is my entire reason for persevering with everything. My enthusiasm, it is my passion. Like I just really enjoy it, honestly. It's just great. It's pretty much all I can say about it.
Do you want to plug your music page, social media, and that before we go?
Oh, sure. Well, on Facebook, you'll find it as Aidan Grant Music, or Instagram, Tunes by Aidan. Just all one big word. Aidan with an A, not an E.
Oh, that actually brings up a story second. But that will all be linked down in the description anyways. Before I let you go, dude, this isn't actually the first time that we've communicated. I don't know if you remember this, but I was walking home from the shop one time. This is going to be a very strange story to start off with. Bear with me. It's all very civil. But I was walking home from the shop and it was absolutely chucking it down with rain, right? And there was a wallet. Next to my house, and I picked it up. There was nothing in it. I mean, I didn't go looking through the wallet. I was like trying to find the owner, obviously. And it had a bus pass and it said Aidan Grant Holtman, but I then went to Facebook to look this up because I just thought it was the quickest way to do it, and then seeing you, but then I noticed the spelling was different, so I was like, nah, it can't be that. Then I second guessed myself and was like, maybe they've misspelt his name and it is his or something. and then I put it up on Facebook to get people to share it and stuff, and people were tagging you in it.
Yeah.
And people were messaging me like, message this dude, it's his and that. I was like, I don't think it is, because I think I'd already messaged you to inquire, and you said no, it's not. And I was like, okay. And then like face palms, like I knew it wasn't. And then the worst thing is, after the rightful owner had been found and that, people were still tagging you in the post.
I still got tagged in that for like 3-4 days afterwards.
I had to end up deleting it because I was like, this dude's getting like harassment from like something that's been solved and not even his. Anyway, but nice to meet you in person.
Yeah, it was great meeting you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Cheers for your time.
It's been amazing,
dude. As always, And cheers.
Nice one. Thank you very much.
This podcast is also available on Google Podcasts, Breaker, Pocketcasts, Radio Public, and Spotify.